Today I'm joined by Adam Reichardt, editor-in-chief of New Eastern Europe. Over the years, he has read, edited, and published countless stories about this region. So today I want to step away from the daily headlines and ask a broader question. Can Europe truly understand Eastern Europe? So my first question will be you once told me that my story about Transnistria was interesting because it was about people. Why do you think stories about people often explain a region better than political analysis does?
Well, thank you, Anna, for the invitation here to be on your podcast. I really appreciate it. And yeah, I've been working at New Eastern Europe for 15 years now. We've been publishing the magazine, so this year is a very big year for us. And one of the things that we always look at when we are looking at the region is how to tell the story of the people, because I think when you tell stories of people, it's a lot easier actually for others, for outsiders to connect, because these are human stories. These are stories that people can find a little bit even of themselves in it and can understand like the human side of it. When we talk about just kind of purely strictly political analysis, it gets when we're trying to reach people, it can be very difficult to for them to understand because there's also there's, as you know, in our region there's a lot of different contexts that have to be understood and explained in order to actually understand the like, kind of the political scene. So when we can go to to understand like more of the human side of the story, I think this allows people to really connect. And then from there, you can start talking about why, certain political developments are taking place, etc. So I think, in my opinion, it's really important to look at the human elements and also, just so people understand that this is not like some foreign, alien planet, actually. It's actually, people live the same way that they live in other countries or want to live, have aspirations to live especially in countries like in our region that have aspirations to live like those in Western Europe, for example. So I think this is a really great way to connect with our audiences and bring these stories to other people.
Yeah, this was a good point to me when I started to write my story with you because this was a point to look like how I looked after that at journalism in general. So I came up with another ideas with to write and to speak about how are people in Ukraine living right now during the war.
Mm.
Do you think journalists sometimes are too focused on system and not enough on how those systems are experienced by people?
Yeah, I think definitely that's a problem for some journalists who maybe also just sometimes when you get too involved in the context, you don't understand that your audience is needing more information, and you focus too much on certain systems when you're based in, especially if you're like experiencing those systems, and it's very difficult to actually translate what are some of the nuances that are involved. So I think, yeah, journalists definitely need to try to, a really good skill for journalists is to remove themselves from the context a bit, and explain things and help the audience understand, certain developments better. This is, an issue we always deal with our journalists and our writers because we really try to publish people who are in the region because we want to tell their story to the world. That's part of the aim of the New Eastern Europe magazine. And so, we try to just say, write as if, your audience knows nothing about what you're talking about, because oftentimes it's truly the case. And, if I think about Transnistria and, there
Yeah.
in Moldova, there's so many people outside of the region, in Western Europe, and let alone outside, Europe, who don't even know where Moldova is, or don't know very much about Moldova or Transnistria, or the conflict which took place there, why there is a breakaway republic. So, like, a lot of times you have to kind of almost retell these stories, and for someone who's local who experiences it, for them it's sometimes even hard because it's like for them it's natural, environment. And yeah, this is a big challenge, I think, and that we always work with our journalists as well as try to tell these things. And we had this experience when you were writing your story about Transnistria. Even some questions I came up with in terms of how the language of Romanian is treated in Transnistria. There's some things that are really like unknown outside Moldova, and I think it was really useful to hear how like people who live in Transnistria still feel Romanian, have this identity, and they also speak the language, and their approach to language is very important to them. And so that's I think also just maybe we can plug your art your piece that you wrote for us
Yeah, for
because
sure.
it was a really good I think a really good explainer and help people understand kind of this human side of the system that you describe in the story.
Yeah, and also how they're like the switching the language. It will be like how you will be approached in the society.
Right, right, yeah. Yeah, and these are experiences which you have, very regularly, but where somebody who's outside doesn't, and to explain this, and there, I can imagine there are readers out there who were in different systems, but had similar experiences maybe in their past, or maybe even in today in different countries, and can kind of connect that way as well. So that's what's I think really useful about this type of telling the story.
Yeah, especially when the like Russian Federation and Russian Empire, Russian Soviet Union as well, they just switched the alphabet of Romanian language with Cyrillic one,
Right,
and it
right.
was very, very messy to people.
I can imagine. Yeah.
You have spent years studying Eastern Europe. What is something you learned from people that not report or policy paper could have taught you?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think, most important, and this is like a bit of an anti advertisement to myself, but actually the fact that we
Please
call
do.
this this region we call this region Eastern Europe, it doesn't really exist actually in terms of like like there are a lot of similarities in these countries, but there are a lot of differences as well. So when we talk about the region of Eastern Europe, it's really broad, and sometimes you can find countries and societies and cultures with, or let's say political developments, economic developments, which are completely opposite of another country in the same region. So like to basket all of these countries in the region and say, hey, this is just Eastern Europe. That's pretty standard across the board. It's actually incorrect, and this is like something that we always struggle with because our magazine is called New Eastern Europe, so we clearly want to promote this region and talk about this region, but we also are very aware that this region is not uniform. There are so many differences among the regions. And there's a great book which I highly recommend to listeners out there if they're interested. It's called Goodbye Eastern Europe by Jacob Mikanovsky, and his starts the book by saying there's no such thing as Eastern Europe, and then he goes through the
Okay.
entire book explaining that there is such a thing as Eastern Europe. So it's a really great, it's a paradox. I think the region is very full of contradictions, full of paradoxes, and that's what I actually love about this region is because despite what I just said, you can actually go to these different countries in the regions and then find those small similarities, which may not exist in like let's say Western European countries. So even just certain habits that may be developed during the communist period. Uh, some still exist, there are some similarities, especially if we look at like cuisine and in post-Soviet countries. I don't like the
Yeah.
word post-Soviet, but countries that were, members of the Soviet Union, there are still some things that did carry over from that time period. And then there's actually legacies in this region which go way before that time. So, you have to look at even influences of like the Austro-Hungarian Empire. So you can be in, Croatia or Romania, Hungary, or even in Poland, even in Western Ukraine, and you can find these similarities as well in architecture, in history, in some social habits, which come from that time period. Ottoman influences in many countries of the region, and these exchanges that took place, throughout our region. It really is actually very fascinating. So when I say there's no such thing as Eastern Europe, it's actually false. There is actually a thing of the region. It's just what defines it is that it is so broad and it's so many influences that have shaped it throughout the centuries. So that this is like kind of like what I really find fascinating. And I mean, I explore and uncover new things all the time. I'm originally from the U.S., so I grew up in the U.S. I moved to Poland when I was a student, and then I set up New Eastern Europe 15 years ago. And it's just like I'm constantly discovering new things. And then, of course, we have, like very, really important developments taking place in the region, which are consequences of historical processes. So we're looking, especially, at the war in Ukraine, for example. So it's really important. I think that's what our conclusion is that this region is like one of the key regions in global development and the in global history. So, we need to understand what's happening here. We need to understand the deeper elements of this region.
When I was only abroad, I think in Western Europe, so I understood how much I love Eastern Europe as well.
Yeah,
Uh,
it has that draw, right? Yeah, definitely.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
kind of person who has never lived in the region fully understand it. Like, as you said, you moved in Poland when you was a student. What did you learn, and what was interesting for you for the first time?
I moved to Poland the first time. So, like, as I said, I grew up in the U.S. And I was a young student, 19 years old, the first time I went to Poland. So, and I have not traveled outside the United States before that. So it was really and this was in 1998, so a really different time period. So I went when I got to Poland. It was before Poland was in NATO. It was before Poland was in the European Union. It was in the middle of the transformation, or I would say actually towards the beginning of the transformation.
Interesting
Yeah,
time.
very interesting time. It was actually a fascinating time, and this was like what kind of drew me to the region, and what I fell in love with the region about was like all of these dynamic changes that were taking place, and just like when I reflect back on that time period, I really saw like how bad Poles wanted to be a part of, the return to Europe was the slogan of the day. And so like Poland and Hungary, Czech Republic, Slovakia, also Baltic states, they were working um, really hard to join European Union and NATO at that time. And just to see the level of hard work that was going in, but also like the desire to be there and the optimism that the future was bright at this time period was really like was really fascinating to observe. And then like but still, especially at that time, there was still a lot of like legacies from the communist period. People, it was still fresh. Yeah, it was only a few
Lenin
years.
statue.
Yeah, I mean, well, that was already gone by the time I got there, thank goodness. Um, but still, like even just the architecture and a lot of surroundings in the local environment was very was still reminiscent of the communist period. You could still feel it. Yeah, there was really still a big difference between gray Eastern Europe and the bright Western Europe. Which is like if you've been to Poland, it's completely changed. That's gone. Yeah, like Poland is now very dynamic, very developed. For the most part, of course, you can see elements of the previous past in it, but it's also just amazing how fast that transformation took place and how Poland, especially like the economy, the society. And the cities have just developed so rapidly that we are catching up really fast with Western Europe. And in some cases have already overtaken. Poland's GDP is now higher than some Western European countries,
And
which is
that's
like
very interesting transformation.
very, very,
And it's a
yeah,
good example for Moldova.
absolutely. And I think this is maybe we don't talk about it enough because when Poland wanted to join the European Union, there were actually a lot of countries that were against it. It was not all like, open arms in Western Europe. And it
Like
was
now.
actually, Yeah, exactly. Now it's a super challenging time. And so I think, it would be good to kind of go back to that time period and say, look, it is possible, it can be done with the right investments, with the right work, with the right attitude. But there was challenges. Germany didn't want Polish workers coming in and flooding their labor workforce, and there was a whole campaign in France that was actually against Poland joining the European Union because the Polish plumbers were going to come and take over French plumbers' jobs. And actually, it was really funny because then Poland did a nice campaign where they found like, a young Polish plumber who was a very attractive guy, Slavic looking guy. And it's like, these are the plumbers you don't want in France, kind of question mark. And it was a good way to actually kind of ease the tension because they used humor. And so I think, there was, and then of course, if you look at the political developments before joining the European Union, well, after is a different story. But there was a broad consensus in Polish society, Polish political elites, that this is the one and only path. There is no other path. And it really was good. The society was consolidated, and it was really easy for towards the end. I can say that once we got to the referendum, it was a bit challenging, and there was some questions whether or not actually it would pass. But that whole process leading up to EU membership was um, very like consensus based in the society, and this is a
And
challenge in a lot.
merit-based.
Yeah, yeah, and this is a challenge in some of the candidate countries right now, where you have where societies are a bit more split. I mean, Moldova is an example.
In
uh,
Romania as well.
yes, yeah, yeah, so it can be challenging. So I don't know if I answered the question, but those
You
are just
do,
some of
yes, you do.
some of the reflections that I have just being in this country for so long.
What I liked about Poland is I've been on several projects organized by Poland's government, Poland, and they completely think like out of the box. This is
Hmm.
their like fascinating thing, because as I was in a project with Miroshevsko's Centrum,
Hmm.
it was like completely, I thought like, oh my God, I think I don't know anything. This is, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Miroshevsky Center is a great institution, and it's a public institution too. So yeah, they know the region really well, like Eastern Europe, yeah,
Yeah,
east of
and they
Poland.
have strong institutions,
Yes,
very
yes.
strong.
Yes. I think, there's a bit of this in the Polish character, during the communist period, and a lot of states that were in this situation have similar probably experiences. When you can't get something done because the state is a barrier, you find ways around it. Yeah, you have to think out of the box. And I think this
Yeah.
really came into Polish mentality. They are pretty good at thinking out of the box. We follow the rules, but when the rules don't make any sense, there's kind of a human side that comes in and like finds a way around it. Yeah.
And that's very, very useful exercises.
Yes, yes. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, yeah, there's, and the thing is that Poland is since joining the European Union, and this is like you can look at how the Eastern Partnership was set up in 2009. It was co-led by Poland, Polish-Swedish initiative. Uh, Poland really wanted to be kind of seen as like the leader of Eastern Europe. Yeah, like its role now, once it became a member of the European Union, its role was to help those countries east of Poland to join. It hasn't been easy, but Poland, I think, still plays this role quite strongly in terms of supporting the countries to the east in their desire to join the European Union.
Moldova is often described through geopolitics, Russia, Europe, security. What do outsiders still misunderstand about Moldovan society, in your opinion?
Uh, I think, well, I mean, the biggest problem is that a lot of people outside the region don't even know much about Moldova at all. But I think definitely the lens of geopolitics dominates, yeah, as you said. So I would say like in terms of like what people don't understand is that Moldova, is its own country and it has its own internal issues that should be looked at. And that it's not only about Russia versus the West, and Moldova is just like a buffer zone somewhere in between. So I think, we have to be a bit broader and understand, like what are the Moldovan aspirations, what does the society think about, and what is taking place there. And there's so many great actually civil society initiatives in Moldova, which people aren't really paying much attention to. You have some really good, even looking at how the political campaign in the last parliamentary elections were, how they managed to address the disinformation and the interference, and like take this kind of Moldovan approach. I think that's very interesting story that a lot of people missed outside the region. But generally, I mean, it's really just like trying to understand even just where Moldova is and its complicated internal issues, because it's not just Transnistria. You also have Gagauzia in the south.
Yeah.
So you have like this also kind of like different forces that are there, different relations that are taking place, and then of course the economic issues and the challenges that still face Moldova. There's a lot I think that we can keep telling the wider audience about in order to better understand
Yeah, a
Moldova.
lot of people asked me about the identity, and
Hmm.
I thought it's not very known because they asked me what is difference between Romanians and Moldovans.
I think this is an issue that really like is really nuanced and many people don't know about. Yeah.
Yeah,
So I mean, how,
and
how do you usually answer that question?
I said there is no big difference because we speak the same language.
Mm.
We were part of the history, the same country. Our country was like our identity was formed in the 19th century when the
Yeah.
most countries was formed. So there is like another question. But if like we were divided by Russian Empire and Stalin after that, and there is another question. What if there is was like from this artificial identity was formed a normal one like Moldovan? And it was a good question, but when
Mm.
you are asking the Moldovan people about this identity, they are still think in these Russian narratives. So from the Stephen the Great, 500 years ago, with Moldovan language. So this is a very, very confusing. Um, I will not say like there is a big differences with Romanian and
Mm.
Moldovans, only like a regional ones, because Romania was formed from Ardeal, Țara Românească, Moldova. This is like regional. Even for
Right.
Transnistrian, you can say it's Transnistrian region, so
Right.
Transnistrians.
Yeah.
But maybe only like we were the part of Soviet Union, and there was more Russian influence as in another regions of members of Soviet Union. How it was in Ukraine, because we also have a lot of common in with Ukrainians,
Hmm.
because we were the part of the same history for a lot of years.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Is
that's a
it? I
very
mean,
difficult question to
I can
answer.
imagine. Would it be fair to say, and I don't know if this is a good comparison, but like Germany and Austria is like Romania, Moldova?
I don't think so. Like
No,
in my opinion,
there's too many differences between Austria and
it's
Germany, you would say.
the same nation, just two countries,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and with the same people and the same language.
Mm-hmm.
We even have like we don't have a patriarchy in religion. It's from Romanian
Ah,
patriarchy.
okay.
It's
Yeah,
our
yeah, that's
canonical.
right.
So it's just very confusing things sometimes for for the people from the West.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I think nowadays a lot of people also in the West don't understand like the like the early 90s in Moldova and how that developed. And also, like, there were the debates about the unification with Romania. And then there was, of course, the conflict with Transnistria and how that all ended up. Uh, and I think also, I don't know what your opinion is, but social media sometimes does kind of a bad job presenting like Transnistria as like the last Soviet state still exists,
Yeah.
and you have like these kind of influencers who go to Transnistria and really like try to like highlight its Sovietness, which of course I guess exists a little bit, but it's not, it's not like a mini Soviet Union. And we see this also sometimes with Belarus. But like, what do you think about that when you have like kind of like a Western like influencer coming and saying this is Soviet Union, it's still alive, well here in Transnistria? Do you think it's a bit too
Uh,
sensational, or does it actually have like is there some truth in it?
it's both. Because
Hmm.
the first question I was asking was, why are you coming here? It's like Soviet Union. What do you
Yeah,
want to
yeah,
see here?
right, right.
There is only, like poor streets. This is like of Lenin statue. Like you have in
Hmm.
Tiraspol, Suvorov,
Mm.
Lenin, Catherine the Great, Taras Shevchenko in the same park.
Oh wow, yeah.
Yeah, very, very confusing.
Yeah.
And the first question I was asked when I was a student, like, why are you coming here? What do you want to see? And yes, they are thinking in a kind of sensations, like these headlines. Oh, I was in Transnistria. This is like Soviet country, the last Soviet country in
Right.
the world. But they don't remember about North Korea as well.
True, that's true. Yes, yes.
Yeah. And this is a very like they have a role to promote this Soviet narrative, not narratives, but
Image or yeah.
yeah, yeah, image of Moldova. And it is true if you're looking at the laws, what are making like so-called laws in the system of justice in Transnistria. If you're looking on the streets, how there are people thinking as well, it's a very, very, especially that one that was born in Soviet Union and
Hmm.
didn't adapt to the times.
Yeah.
They're very nostalgic about it. But it's a region like mm, completely forgotten to the world.
Yeah.
Uh, People are leaving, especially young ones, because they don't want to live there. There is no future, no perspectives. So this is a very problematic region, not from the people who are living there, but from the political side of Moldova. They
Hmm.
cannot invest a lot of money in this region because you simply don't have, like, you will not have control on the territory, and you don't have control on the territory.
Right, right.
This is why it's the one of the poorest. If you will go in Gagauzia, in the last 4 years, there was a lot of investments from European Union, so there are
Hmm.
good roads. And from Turkey as well. There is a
Right.
university, a lot of projects, so they're like much better than Transnistria.
Hmm.
So I will
Yeah.
say like
I mean,
Transnistria should should look at Gagauzia and
absolutely. Yeah.
Moldova.
Because Russia's not investing in it so much. Yeah. Like not positively investing, let's say.
Yeah.
It's only using Transnistria as kind of a, as a way to hold the Moldova hostage a bit and Europe.
Yeah, and some days ago or yesterday, I don't remember to be honest, but it was like the so-called president of Transnistria told like only one way to keep the peace in Transnistria is to hold the Russian army in Transnistria,
Mm. Hmm.
to keep
Hmm.
them. And like,
Right.
okay, it's for you good, for us it's not good for the people.
Right. 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 Right.
So in today's media environment, what makes a story memorable?
That's a that's the million-dollar question.
From the
Um,
journalist perspective.
I mean, we have to look at it a bit from an ethical journalist perspective because, we can look at it from what does in today's media environment, what makes a story memorable, usually is like at least the approach of mainstream media and low quality media is sensationalism, is scandal, it's something that's going to just
The
like
yellow one, yeah, you mean?
yeah, I mean, yeah, these kind of things. And this is, but in the end, a lot of this is more harmful to society. It's more polarizing. It's creating more divisions, and it's not helpful. I, it's really challenging. Like, I think, it really depends on who is your audience, what is your topic, what are you covering, like something, I always do try to find like the good stories, positive stories. These can be memorable. I have, some of the ones that we've published over the years, the ones that I remember, and we've published, thousands of texts, but ones that I remember oftentimes are like these really interesting stories about, I don't know, like some old lady in a village in Bulgaria where nobody else lives anymore, and she runs like an agrotourist business that's all of a sudden become really popular among alternative tourists and is booming. Yeah, like these, it's kind of like a really interesting story. These kind of stories where like you just never expect something like this to happen. Those are the ones, in my opinion, that are memorable. But it really depends on each audience, that each reader, each listener or viewer, whatever you're working on, in terms of your journalism. So this is it's a very difficult question, and I think, if someone had the answer, they would be like probably journalist of the year. Um,
Yeah.
so, of course, the tragedy is very memorable because it's really, hits the emotions, and we look at those journalists who were, let's say, the first ones. A colleague of mine, a Polish journalist, he was in Ukraine in 2014 when MH17 crashed, and he was like one of the first ones there, and he, saw bodies and the luggage, and like and people coming and like looting the luggage, taking stuff out of the luggage and running away. And he was traumatized actually by like what he saw, but his story, is like unforgettable when he wrote it and you read about it, like what he was experienced. Or those journalists who were like, in first to show up in Bucha, for example, those are memorable stories because they're so tragic and so terrible. And unfortunately, that's, this is
And
what we
because
remember.
you cannot rationalize it, like it's very like unimaginable to happen in
Yes,
these
yes.
years, like
Right. Like how something like this could happen in 2020, uh, like
2022
2022
it
or
was, yeah.
yeah, yeah. So, these are and those are, those of course are very memorable pieces, but I really, I am forever an optimistic person even in this very dark world that we live in. So I do hope that, there are like really powerful positive stories that people can remember, and we try to, we work with our journalists to find those stories as well.
Maybe because people are learning a lot through emotional shocks. This is
Mm,
the question I was asking myself.
hmm.
And this is like because these stories are staying a lot with us. We are trying to not forget what's this very like emotional stories, people who are living hard times, especially in Ukraine right now. There was two attacks 1 week ago and on the night of 6th July, and my friends just texted me on WhatsApp. They just couldn't sleep all night, and this is very terrible night
Yeah,
in Kiev.
yeah.
So this is as well like a journalist from Moldova who covered the Ukraine war. We had a movie we watched on the 3rd of May on the Independence Press Day. So the this like what I saw there in this movie, it completely shocked me from the first days of the war. So I don't think I will forget ever these
Mm, hmm.
images, but they were in the like in Ukraine. They were filming it. They saw it with their own eyes. It's
Right,
completely
right.
different things.
Yes, yes. I mean, I can only imagine also like it can be quite traumatic for journalists to be filming this and documenting it, which is really important. But at the same time, like there are a lot of issues when you're doing this kind of journalism about like should you just sit and document it, or should you be active? Should you, if something is happening, it's you need to help somebody, like do you put the camera down and go help? Yeah, these are really, really challenging questions and times that people are working in, and a ton of respect for all the journalists that are covering this war. And what's really shocking is that, of all of these things that are happening, we know they're happening because we have great journalists who are documenting it and covering it. And then you have, still populations who are far away who like deny
Yeah.
that this is even taking place. They believe the disinformation over the factual reporting. And this is like, this is a huge challenge that journalists have to face. It's like people live in different realities, and how do you show them that, like there's a distorted reality and then there's kind of a reality which is based on the facts. How do you bridge that gap and reach them with the facts? And this is a really big challenge for journalists today, is like reporting in this environment of disinformation, of fake news and trolls, and it really is malign interference from actors. I mean, in our region, of course, it's Russia that's really, and they adapt and they do really well at like reaching people and changing their minds on things. And this is something that we have to really fight hard with.
I think it's the most people who are denying what's happening in Ukraine, and because of course, Russian Federation during the years was like they made these anti-Ukrainian narratives
Mm,
in Europe as well, and completely to deny Ukrainian identity, and
right.
because the history is very instrumentalized in the media, in politics, in propaganda, of course. And what they are do very well, I hate to say it, but they are working with people's emotions.
Yes, absolutely. Which is actually really, I mean, I always like wonder how it is that somebody can deny, people are Ukrainians are dying, like on a daily basis, civilians especially, like
The
in
children, yeah.
yeah, yeah, in these attacks, and then you can just deny that. I mean, it's where's the humanity, at least the very basic humanity. But you're right, it's because these emotions are being played with and manipulated from the Russia side, and people are already like, and it is like this. They live in this different reality, so they just like don't agree with the facts. They just don't believe the facts. They see it through a different lens because that's how they are shaped and manipulated to believe.
And this is why, like, people also doesn't use their brain. Sad to say this.
Sad, yes. Unfortunately, we need more critical thinking, and like we talk about this. I participate in a lot of different events, and you, I'm sure you as well, and like disinformation. How do we tackle disinformation? It really does go back to like, early level of education. And we need to. This is where we need to invest first and foremost, is the critical thinking and like and getting people to question like not question like facts, but try to like verify it themselves. Yeah, like to understand like what is the truth and not just accept one narrative over the other. And we don't have enough of that. This is where we really need to work on. And education, unfortunately, especially in our region, in many countries in our region, education is one of the last things that people are interested in investing. On
I asked one of the politicians why they are not very invested in education, just on the populism, and they're saying because education, we need a good education, but they're not doing anything in this.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
they
yeah.
answered me like in the like of the record, it's a very good topic. You have to say about this, but it's a long-term project, so. Maybe for like after 4 years, I will not be in the same room I'm now. So
Right,
it's like not my problem or something.
right.
Yeah,
Yes,
and it's a very like, and they're trying to say it's in a populist way about
right.
education.
Yes, yes, exactly. It's a lot of rhetoric, but very little action, and very little resources. Exactly. This is the problem is with politics. It's very short-sighted. Yeah, it's not long-term thinking. And we have to really invest in long term if our societies are to survive and to thrive and to grow and to be better. But unfortunately, politicians, yeah, don't, they agree with you, but then they won't take action because
Yeah, they
it's
are
not gonna,
took anything else, not but
yeah,
not
it's not gonna get them
about their
elected.
promises.
Yeah, 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 exactly.
And the final question, you have spent much of your career trying to explain Eastern Europe to wider audiences. What is one thing wish Europe understood better about this region?
I think I would say that's a challenging one because it goes back to what we talked about earlier about the commonalities and differences of the region. But I think, just understanding that this region is European. Yeah, I think there still is this divide between the East and the West. And it's not a physical divide, it's a mental divide. And even like being in Poland, people come here from Western Europe and they're like, wow, I didn't know that this country is like this. I expected just gray, sad people. And instead of like, dynamic, very, very, advanced
They are very
European way of.
surprised of Poland, yeah?
Yes, yes, oftentimes. And I think if you even go to, to any country in our region, of course, there's still some developmental lacking in some countries, in Balkans and things, but I think the general attitude outside is that it's just like stopped in time, during the communist period, and that's where it's stuck. That's not the case. There are so many really interesting things that are happening either in culture, in society, in civil society. And I think also the Europeanness, the feeling of being European in these countries is very strong. And this is what I also think is that Western Europeans don't really fully understand. Look, when Ukrainians went to the Maidan, they went with EU flags. The Heavenly Hundred who were killed on the Maidan in 2014, they were waving not just Ukrainian flags, but EU flags. And this is the only time where people died, for the idea of European Union. In Western Europe, nobody's going to die for the idea of the European Union, but the countries that want to be a part of European Union, societies that want to be a part, they're willing to, even like Georgians. Look how many Georgians like are really fighting back against their government's backsliding, and you see European Union flags everywhere. Even in Moldova, you'll see people with European Union flags, and it's
Yeah.
so like this idea of European Union is sometimes even stronger in these countries than it is in Western Europe, where people are very like blasé, like it's like whatever.
They are
Uh,
taking this for granted
they're
because they
taking
were
it for
born
granted.
there, and
Yeah,
as we like in Moldova, in Ukraine, Georgia, we were not born with this privilege, I will say.
right, right,
And
right.
you have to prove your European identity, and you have to fight for it against Russian interference and to say like, yes, I'm European like you, but I will be like I was no such like lucky like
Mm.
you to be born in the European Union. So
Right,
this is,
right. Yeah, and so that's kind of I think that's the core of what I think people should know more about this region is that there are a lot more similarities than they think. I think especially when you think about like a country like Georgia or Armenia, people in Western Europe see it as really far away, and a lot of people will admit they say that's not Europe, but those people who lived in those countries, they feel European. And so like how do we bridge that gap? How do we say, no, look, there is a lot of there are a lot of things that you have in common. And so many, and the diaspora of these countries are quite large, and they already live in European Union. So you have they are actually the bridge. This is what we should be looking at as kind of the bridge, is the diaspora communities in Western Europe from those countries, because they already have this this experience of being in the European Union, but yet still the identity of the countries that they come from.
Yeah, and the most like I did some interview with Baltics leaders from in parliament, from a prime minister of Lithuania, and I asked them what message they could give to the younger people from their
Mm,
countries, like
mm,
20 years old, I don't know, like 25, and they said like don't took for granted the independence of our country and the EU membership, because you have to fight every day and to be part of the society, like to be a doctor, a lawyer, a teacher, and don't forget about our history. It's like we were part of Soviet Union, we were under them, so this is the message they give, like don't took it for granted.
absolutely. I think it's a great message. I think it's a really, really good message. And this is something that, it probably should go beyond just Baltic states. It's like everybody in the European Union. And unfortunately, it's like when you hear about EU, you just think of something that's happening in Brussels, but you don't even know what's like really happening. Yeah, and this is a problem when they create this disconnect between society and the European Union. I just at a conference which was organized by one of the European institutions, and like the debate about a really good debate actually about how Europeans know more about Donald Trump than they do about what's happening in Brussels.
Yeah,
Because
that's
the
very,
media, the
very good
problem, actually, media has
point.
a role to play, and it's not doing a good job on like explaining and also education, but explaining, how Brussels works and what's happening in Brussels, what's really, this is more important than what Donald Trump says on Truth Social. But yet,
Because
this is
Donald
what even
Trump is
Europe.
saying something now, and after 20 minutes, he will say completely different things, and
Yes,
I think it's
yes.
a waste of time.
It is, but it's what generates clicks, and as we go
Yeah,
back to sensationalism in journalism.
and media
So
is very, very about clicks and to get
yes, yes,
audience,
yes,
and
exactly. So this goes back to the role of also journalists and media. What I think they have to play a stronger role in building. I think there still needs to be a process of building European identity throughout Europe. Inside and outside the European Union, this common European identity.
it's a
And
homework.
it is a lot of homework that needs to still be done because Europe is, there are a lot of red flags right now in Europe, and we need to look at how to
So,
deal
are
with
you
it.
optimistic about these things?
I'm always an optimist, but there is a realist side to me, and the realist side to me says that there are a lot of challenges ahead. And I think we should look at what's going to happen in France. We should watch closely. Polish-Ukrainian relations are going in a very bad direction.
Yeah,
We should look at also what's happening in the Balkans, in the Western Balkan region, in especially in terms of enlargement. Montenegro, is planning to join the European Union in 2 years maximum. And if that process is blocked for whatever reason, I think that will really like harm the EU's enlargement portfolio, and I think will cause some problems for Moldova and Ukraine. If Montenegro is like blocked, because there's no reason Montenegro cannot join tomorrow, in my opinion. That's my opinion. But societies in a lot of European Union countries are becoming fatigued with many different things, and populism, I think, has not gone away. It's only
will
coming
rise
back.
up.
Yeah, yeah. So a lot of
Yes.
challenges, but I am optimistic, working with a lot of great young people like yourself and others in the region and in Europe. I think, there's still a lot to be hopeful for and a lot to be optimistic about. It's not only doom and gloom. Social media algorithms sometimes like to promote this doomy and dark world, but I think there's still a lot of positive in it, so we have to look for that as well.
Thank you for this conversation, Adam.
Thank you so
Um,
much, Anna.
it was my pleasure.
My pleasure as well.
Subscribe to my channel.